part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Today on the Full 40 podcast, we're going to hop into some of the top stories in college basketball, including Coach K and Amaker and Shire and that whole deal. We're also going to talk about the winners and losers from this past week, as well as taking a look ahead to this weekend and what's in store. So stay tuned. It's going to be a really, really good show. Hope you guys enjoy. What's good, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Full 40 College Basketball Podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm your host, and I go by the name of Taylor Vanderbilt. And again, and as always, I'm so excited for you guys to be here today. As I said in the intro, we have some really, really interesting topics to talk about today. But I want to start off with, as you guys know, I'm a Duke fan. So I want to start off with this very interesting story that's kind of popped up here lately out of Durham. It has to do with Coach K and essentially making Jon Scheyer the coach in waiting. So I have a different perspective on this as a Duke fan. I've kind of seen the trajectory of who let me backtrack. I've always had this thought that eventually Coach K was going to retire. We didn't know when. We didn't know what it would look like. Me personally, I thought once the one and done era kind of got started, I really didn't think, especially after 2015 when they won the national championship, I didn't think he had many more years left. I personally thought he was going to leave after 2015. But once he stayed and he, as we saw, has had success in the one and done era, it kind of got me to thinking who would be next. So for me, I've always had a short list of guys that I have kind of always thought would be the best person for the position. Originally, I loved Steve Wojciechowski, Coach Wojo, as a lot of people know him. He was at Marquette. He did a solid job at Marquette. Wasn't great, but he did an okay job there. But I always thought that Wojo was going to be first in line. I mean, he was one of the long-time assistants for Coach K. He was kind of what Jon Scheyer is now. I would say him and Coach Collins, who I'll get into in a second, were kind of what Jon Scheyer is now, in that kind of associate head coach. If Coach got sick, he would fill in, that type of deal. Him or Collins would fill in. So I thought, that was my first idea. Second, I would say it would be Coach Collins, who's now at Northwestern. For me, I just kind of thought that was a very simple transition. He's a really, really good coach, X's and O's wise. He's not having as much success as he probably would like at Northwestern, but you also got to remember it is Northwestern. I don't know if they have a huge basketball history, and also being in one of the strongest basketball conferences historically and currently in the Big Ten, it's really hard to kind of get that going when you have to play the likes of Michigan State, Indiana, Ohio State, Purdue, Illinois, all these very, very good to solid teams who are year in and year out just producing and producing. Then third in line was Johnny Dawkins. Johnny Dawkins is at UCF. He's done a great job. Almost beat Duke in the NCAA tournament a few years ago when Zion and RJ won that very, very, very close game. So those, in my opinion, were the three guys that I just kind of looked at as these are my top guys for, Coach K when he decides to step down. I'm going to be honest with you. Tommy Amaker was not on that list. And it's not because he's a bad coach or anything like that. He just wasn't ever on my personal short list for that position. And then when you kind of look at the power struggle that has come from it, you have a guy like Jon Scheyer. Now, a lot of people, don't necessarily remember Jon Scheyer unless you're a college basketball kind of junkie or that type of deal. But Scheyer was one of a great player at Duke, won a national championship in 2010 with Nolan Smith, who's also an assistant coach on the staff now. But the thing about Scheyer that a lot of people, haven't realized or don't know is he's one of the best recruiters in the country. If you just look at next year's recruiting class, even though those kids know that K isn't going to be there, he has still produced the number one recruiting class in the country that currently has 3 players. I think there's 5 players up right now for the high school Naismith Award, which is the best high school player in the country. 3 of those players are in this next cycle's recruiting class for Duke. So Shire is not only recruiting at a high level, but we've seen him coach before. He's filled in for K. He's filled in for K this year, twice, I believe, and he's won. He's never lost as a fill-in coach. So he does a fantastic job. You can even see his style of play when he's coaching is a little bit more open, a little bit more NBA style. Even though Coach K isn't, super structured and we're going to run this set here, it's definitely more of an open, flowing offense that I'm sure guys, hopefully in the future, will love. But just going back, it's hard for me to just comprehend this concept of, that the Duke brass would essentially go behind Coach K's back and say, this is the guy we want, instead of asking the man who has essentially built up this program that from essentially the ground, I wouldn't say the ground up, but there were some pieces there in the 60s and things like that, but essentially taking this program to new heights, making it what it is today, the brotherhood, being able for guys like Kyrie Irving, Jabari Parker, Jahlil Okafor, number 1 recruits in the country to come to this school and want to play here. That was Coach K. The 5 national championships, Coach K. The Final Fours, Coach K. The players come and go, but he has been a constant stalwart of this success. So it's interesting to me, that the Duke brass would go behind his back, essentially, to do that. And then not only that, but to go and get Tommy Amaker, who, and I want to be clear here, Tommy Amaker is a very, very good coach. He's a very good coach. He's done well in just about every spot that he's been in. And well is somewhat relative, but he's done well. He has I think a 60% win percentage. I think it's 60.4, and that's very, very good. That's very, very good. So I don't want to knock him and his coaching ability, because that's not what it's about. But what I am going to talk about is I took a look at his record, because being in my 20s, there was a part of the early 2000s that I did not know where Tommy Amaker coached at Seton Hall in Michigan until I did some research. But even just looking at that, he goes to Seton Hall, his first job that he gets. He goes to Seton Hall, and he gets him to the NCAA tournament his 3rd year. Very, very good job. Awesome to see. Then you see the next year they kind of go down, and they're 16 and 15. Then he takes the job at Michigan. Now, at Michigan, that's a bigger program. I'm not saying that I expect big things like national championships or anything like that, but I do expect to be competitive, especially what it seems he was a really good coach or had some really good years at Seton Hall, which in the Big East, another tough conference, but still not the bigger school in the Big East, especially back then at Syracuse, Georgetown, Connecticut, big-time basketball schools in that conference. So it was a lot harder. But then you go to Michigan. That's cream of the crop when it comes to Big Ten basketball historically. And he goes to Michigan and he makes the NIT essentially once, and they win the NIT. And that's essentially the top of his success there at Michigan. Then he moves on to Harvard. And I think what he's done at Harvard is a exceptional job. I mean, getting them to the NCAA tournament 4 years in a row is very exceptional. But the thing about it is they haven't been now since 2016, excuse me. That was the last NCAA tournament that they participated in. Not saying that they're not a good team or that he's not a great coach, but that's just the last NCAA tournament they participated in. So for me to look at all I've looked at and then look at the 3 coaches that I've named, Coach Collins has gotten Northwestern to the NCAA tournament. As I said before, Johnny Dawkins, he got UCF to almost, I believe they were the second round, so it was almost a Sweet 16. when they had Taco Fall and all those guys, and they played Zion. And then you go Coach Wojciechowski, who did a wonderful job at Marquette, got them to the tournament a few times as well. And when I just look at kind of, like I said, those three guys that I have in mind based on, and then against Tommy Amaker's record, and then I look at the story that came out, I really just think that this is especially because there's no quotes from Coach K and Coach Amaker, and neither one of them spoke up on the story. It was just Ian O'Connor writing what he was told, I guess the facts that he was given, which I'll never shade a journalist for that. I mean, but at the same time, it just doesn't add up. That's what I'll say. It just doesn't add up to me. So it really doesn't make sense. It's a crazy story to come out right now, especially when Coach K's like kind of farewell tour is kind of really coming to an end. So interesting time for the story to drop. Interesting person to be in the story, especially, like I said, as someone who, as a Duke fan, I didn't really ever think about as a coach in waiting or somebody on that short list of coaches. So yeah. But moving on from Duke and Coach Shire and Coach Amaker, there's another story I want to tap into, and that is about we're going to go to the women's basketball side. So on the women's side, there is a assistant coach by the name of Sydney Carter. She is an assistant coach at Texas A&M, and she was criticized on Twitter, on Facebook, which, why are people still on Facebook right now? It's old, it's outdated. But she was criticized on Facebook for essentially wearing outfits that I guess people did not deem as, something a college basketball coach should wear. Me personally, I haven't seen anything wrong with it at all. Now, mind you, she tweets out her outfits, I believe, before every single game. And that's just something she likes to do. I'm all for that. I love fashion myself, so I'm all for that. I mean, sports and basketball in general is so much more than just the game on the floor. Like, even when I was coming up, you had to, the short sleeve T-shirts under your jersey was cool, or the shooting sleeves, or like the swag you have on the court matters just as much as what you do on the court. And same thing when it goes off. A lot of basketball players nowadays in the NIL era and in the, when you look at NBA guys, they kind of they set our trends in fashion. So I believe that those two things cross. But for me, I've never seen a problem with any of her outfits. They've always looked very, very put together. It's nothing, I wouldn't even say flashy, even though I don't necessarily care, but it's nothing like flashy or anything that's inappropriate, I should say. But apparently some of these people had something to say about her outfit. Now, the outfit in question was Texas A&M had a breast cancer awareness game, and she wore, I believe they were pink leather pants. I don't know the exact material. Obviously, I don't have them in hand. But they look like the leather pants that you see women wear out to bars and things like that, or just out here in the world. Normally in black is what I usually see, but she had them in pink, and it went with the theme. It was a breast cancer awareness game for Texas A&M. So obviously pink, everyone's wearing pink. So she wore that, and then she has a turtleneck, just a plain regular white turtleneck. Like, I don't understand why in today's day and age, people in general, men especially, but people in general, feel the need to talk about somebody's appearance instead of what they do on the floor. If it's my child's playing for her, I know that she is a great coach. I believe she also played at Texas A&M as well. So not only do I know she can teach something to my child as a coach, but she's been through it. So I know that any hardships and struggles that, I don't have a child, but if I did, they may have, I feel comfortable with her dealing with him. So for someone to call her out because she wore some pink pants to celebrate breast cancer awareness, that doesn't make any sense to me. People, focus on the sport, not what people have on. And just in general in life, focus on what people can do, the skills they have, not what they're wearing or how they look doing it. It's never really made sense to me, and I hope she keeps doing what she's doing. I really appreciate someone who, likes to add their own flavor or style to what they do. So shout out to you, Coach Carter. Shout out to all the women's basketball coaches out there, as it is one of the most purest forms of the game of basketball that you can watch. Yes, it might not be exciting to you because they don't dunk or do any of the things LeBron James does on a regular basis, but as I'll get into later, they have some hoopers. So if you're not watching women's basketball, if you're not a fan of women's basketball, you should definitely tune in. And if you do, don't make any comments about what they have on. Just watch the game. Because if it was Coach K and he put on, he put on a sweatsuit, you wouldn't say that's inappropriate or unprofessional, now would you? I didn't think so. So moving on to my last kind of news of the day, and this one is somewhat sad. Tubby Smith, who I've kind of watched over my entire life. Obviously, he's a lot older than me. He's been coaching a lot longer than I've been alive. But I've watched him since he was, at Kentucky. I kind of grew up, watching him. My dad was a big fan of him as well. He, went to Georgia, Minnesota, Tech, Memphis. So he's been a lot of places, but he is stepping down from his position at High Point as the head coach. He got COVID for the second time in less than a year, and I guess he was just ready to hang it up. And it kind of sucks because, with Coach K retiring and seeing kind of the old guard kind of leaving and all these new, younger coaches coming in, and that torch passing, it's just really sad to see. So prayers up for Coach Tubby. I hope everything is doing well. I hear that he is actually giving the job to his son. His son is actually going to take over as the head coach now at High Point. That's really, really cool. A really, really cool thing to see. So again, prayers up to Tubby. Hope he's okay. I know it's just COVID, and there's a lot of different opinions about that, but with him being kind of older, I hope he's okay, doing well, and I hope to see him out at more games. I hope to see him coaching again, possibly, but I doubt that happens. But yeah, so that is that. So now let's move on to the winners and losers for this past week. My first winner on this list is one of my favorite players to watch right now. She, yes, I said she, goes by the name of Caitlin Clark. And if you don't know who Caitlin Clark is, you really need to pay attention to sports. So first off, let me tell you just her stats. She's averaging 27, 8, and 8 on 45% shooting. Now, mind you, that's not something to slouch at. She's had multiple 40-point games this year. She's had, I think, multiple triple doubles. I don't even remember how many triple doubles, but she's had multiple triple doubles. I mean, she is just balling. And if you haven't seen her play, you definitely should. And if you think I'm just, hyping her up or whatever, go listen to the ECC's podcast with Kevin Durant. He says the exact same things. She's a baller. How many college players, how many players do you know have the audacity to come across half court and just pull like what she did at Michigan? And she got 46 points in a loss. But she was coming across half court, pulling from the M. She was the reason that they were basically in the game. It's amazing to watch. I love watching her play. This past week, her last game, she had 19, 6, and 6. She's an all-around player. I will say her. The one thing that about her game that I guess is for me is the only negative I see is the turnovers. And to me, the way I look at that is it's kind of like Russell Westbrook. She has the ball, or the old Russell Westbrook, the OKC Russell Westbrook, excuse me, not the Lakers one. But she has the ball in her hands so much, and she's asked to do so much that she's going to have turnovers. If we all have to remember, she's still a college player at the end of the day. So she's going to have turnovers. It's going to happen. But that's really the only hole that I see in her game. She's going to be a great WNBA player. She is already a great college player, and I'm very, very excited to see where her career takes her next. But if you have not seen Caitlin Clark play, make sure you tune in whenever you can. I don't necessarily know when their next game is off the top of my head, but make sure you tune in whenever it happens. Next up on my list is actually a guy who went off last night. If you were watching ESPN, you might have seen this, but he goes by the name of Frankie Fiddler, and he is plays for, I guess is it the University of Omaha University? I'm not really sure which one it is, but he is an amazing player. And when I tell you last night, he did one of the most incredible things that I've ever seen in my life. It was awesome. So Frankie Fiddler plays for Omaha. Omaha last night, they played a team, Denver. I think it's the University of Denver. Now, with 1 minute and 30 seconds left, they were down 69-61, right? So they were down 8. Frankie Fiddler made a layup to make it 63-69. His team then forces a turnover. He scores another bucket to make it a 4-point game. He gets fouled on that bucket. It's an M1, hits the free throw. It is now a 3-point game. So now it's getting tight. It's getting to the nitty-gritty. So watching this, you would think, okay, if I'm Denver, take care of the ball, that type of thing. Nope, they turn it over again. As you might have guessed, who gets the ball? The Fiddler. And what does he do with it? He ties the game up with a 3. So in less than a minute, they went from down 8 to tied, and he scored all 8 points. Now, this is where it gets fun, and this is the reason I love college basketball, because things like this happen. So Denver has the ball, basically can get essentially the last shot of the game. It's 38 seconds left, so they can dwindle it down. They don't do that. Instead, with about 12 seconds left, about 15 seconds left, player from Denver drops to the basket. He misses a layup. Of course, who gets the rebound? The Fiddler. And what does he proceed to do? He proceeds to dribble down the court, pull up, and hit a buzzer beater 3. So shout out to you, Frankie Fiddler, for scoring 11 points in 1 minute and 30 seconds to come back and beat Denver. It was an amazing game to watch. If you had money on the game, I believe Denver was actually a 1.5 point favorite. So not only did he take money out of the people who betted for Denver's pockets, but in turn he flipped it around. And if you had Omaha to cover, they definitely did do that. So shout out to Frankie Fiddler and his legendary performance last night. It was really, really awesome to watch. If you haven't seen it, check out Omaha men's basketball Twitter, and you can pretty much see every play from that last minute 30. Next up on my winners list, we're going to talk about Rutgers basketball. Now, if you haven't seen Rutgers play, they're a very, very exciting team to watch, in my opinion. I think they're always in a game. That's the way I like to put it. If you look at their schedule, I think their biggest loss this year is 14. They lost to Illinois by 30. So the way I said that was hilarious. But other than that, outside of that 30-point loss to Illinois, they've been in every single game just about that they've played. But the reason they're on my winners list is because what they've done here lately. In their last 4 games, they've beaten number 12 Illinois, number 14 Wisconsin, number 16 Ohio State, and number 13 Michigan State. They actually beat Michigan State by 20. So they are one of the hottest teams in America right now. I really, really, really love what they're doing. Ron Harper Jr. is an amazing player to watch. I know he's kind of banged up right now, so hopefully he can go. They have Purdue this weekend, which is going to be a very fun game to watch, as the last time they played, Rutgers actually beat Purdue, so they kind of have their number. And that was when Purdue was number 1 in the country. So really excited to watch this game and see how it plays out. Because it's a really big game in the Big Ten as well. If Rutgers wins, they go to 11-5, which kind of puts them in that top 4 space of the Big Ten. It puts them in that top 4 space of the Big Ten, right there with Purdue, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Ohio State. So it is a very, very big game, and so I'm very excited to watch. But yes, Rutgers on my winners list, 4 straight against 4 really good ranked teams in the Big Ten. If they beat Purdue on Sunday, I really, really think that they solidified themselves for the NCAA tournament. I already think they have, but I really do think if they finish strong to the end of the season and get Purdue on Sunday, that they will have punched their ticket. My last winner on this list is a team that had a rough start to the season, like a very, very rough start to the season. A lot of people were calling for firing of the head coach, or saying that he didn't know what he was doing, all kind of stuff. But they've since turned it around. They are now 3rd, only a game and a half back of first place in their conference, and that is the University of Memphis Tigers. Memphis has had some struggles this season, as we know, but they've won 6 straight, including beating number 6 Houston at Houston, which is a humongous game for them. They have to play them again at home in Memphis to finish out the season. But that was a huge, huge win over Houston this past week, as well as beating Cincinnati. I really like what this Memphis team has been able to do here lately. Imani Bates has left the program, left the team. Not really sure how that situation is working out. But Jalen Durham, it looks like he's kind of finally figuring things out. He's, their leading scorer. I feel like they finally are starting to gel together as a team. Lester Quinones has been shooting well as of late. You have guys like Alex Lomax and Tyler Harris, who are more veteran guards, who are really, really out there and kind of putting the team in the right positions. And I think they're definitely a team. I believe they're last 4 in on Joe Lunardi's bracketology right now. But I definitely think that they're a team who, if they get in a tournament, they can win 1 or 2 games because they have the talent to do it. But they have to finish the season strong. And so far, they're trying their best to do that. Like I said, they've won 6 straight. In Houston, beating Houston last week was a huge, huge, huge win, especially on the road. And yes, I know they don't have Marcus Sasser or anything like that, but they're still a really, really good team even without him. So Memphis is my last winner of the week, and now we can transition to the L7s, the losers of the week. And first up on that list we're going back to the Big Ten. I want to talk about Michigan State, the Spartans. They're having a great year so far, 19th in the country right now. But they had a very surprising loss to Penn State after beating Indiana. Or even with the win against Indiana, they've lost 3 of their last 4. They lost to Rutgers by 20. Wisconsin beat them at home by 8. And then they lost at Penn State, who's an okay team. They're not a tournament team or anything like that. But they're gonna give you some trouble. That's what I'll say. They're one of those teams. Everybody has those teams in conference that are just really scrappy and can give you some trouble if they get hot or something like that. And Penn State did just that. They beating them. Penn State did just that in beating them this past week. I really think Michigan State, I don't think they're in jeopardy of missing a tournament or anything like that, but I really do think that they need to finish strong here, finish the season strong. But when you look at their schedule, Illinois, Iowa, Purdue, Michigan, who's come on here as of late, Ohio State, these next 5 games are really going to be telling about where they're positioned in the NCAA tournament. I think if they can get 3 out of the 5 or even 4 out of the 5, I think they position themselves great for the NCAA tournament, but I just don't see that happening. It's going to be very interesting to watch, but big setback these last 4 games, and then losing to Penn State does not help either. So that is my first loser of the week. Next, we move on to a school I'm very, very, very happy to talk about being on my losers list, and that is the North Carolina Tar Heels. North Carolina has had a very weird season in Hubert Davis's first year. They are an okay team. They're not a very good team. They haven't really beaten anybody of note. When you look at their schedule, I mean, the big games they've had, Purdue they lost, Tennessee they lost, Kentucky they lost, Duke they lost, Miami, the big games in conference, Notre Dame, they're at the top of the ACC right there with Duke at 12-3, loss. Miami, 30-point loss. Wake Forest, 20-point loss. Duke, 20-point loss. But the cream of the crop of those losses comes this past week to Pittsburgh. Now, Pittsburgh has a really great head coach, but their team is not so great. The bottom half of the ACC is not great. Personally, once you get past Florida State, I don't think there really is a good team outside of Clemson. I think Clemson is they just had a rocky season, but I think they are an okay team. But after you get past Florida State, there's really no one great. There's really no one good. And Pittsburgh falls into that category. Like I said, great coach, not a great team. But for North Carolina to go out there and get beat by 9, essentially not be in the game at all, really, I wouldn't say at any point, but really just at all. I mean, in the first half, Pitt had them up 17, and North Carolina came storming back, but they really were never in the game. And it's kind of disappointing because if any of the years I wanted North Carolina to be good, like I said, I'm a Duke fan. I'm not going to shy away from that. I wanted to be this year. I wanted to have a really good Duke North Carolina game, this, that, and the third, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So North Carolina is on my losers list as definitely probably my biggest loser of the week. So last but not least, I want to transition into taking a look ahead to this weekend. I've already kind of highlighted 1 or 2 of these games, but I want to talk about some a little bit more. My first game of this week is Illinois at Michigan State. It's a big game in the Big Ten, as I kind of already laid out. They have I think they're both 9-5, or I believe Michigan State's 9-5, Illinois is 10-5. So this is a huge game in the Big Ten as far as standings go for the conference tournament. Illinois is 11-4, Michigan State's 9-5. So a win here for Michigan State would put them up into that top, just kind of like I was talking about Rutgers. They would put them up into that top 4 or 5 because it's so close in the Big Ten. It's going to be very, very fun to watch. I'm very excited to see that game. I think it's going to be very high level. Next up is the rematch of the Fighting Chris Beards against Texas. Now this game I think this game will be fun as long as Chris Beard is at Texas. But what I think for me is funny is that Texas Tech is better than Texas this year. And it's like, it almost makes you think like Chris Beard's a great coach. He's an amazing coach. But was it the players that were really, really, his recruiter, that type of dude, just, I don't know. I don't really know how to phrase it specifically, but I'm going to enjoy this game so much. It's also a big game in the Big 12. I mean, Kansas, per usual, is kind of running away with the conference. I don't really think anybody's going to catch them for the regular season conference title. But Texas has an opportunity to position themselves in a really good spot for the Big 12 tournament. They're 8-5 right now. Texas Tech is 9-4. Do I think Texas is going to win? No. I like Texas Tech a lot, especially what they do defensively. That's nothing new. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the rematch of Texas and Texas Tech this weekend. Next up, we have Bama and UK, which this game is not really interesting in terms of seeding and standings and anything at that point. But I just personally think it's a big game for both of these teams. For Alabama, this is a big game for their seeding in the NCAA tournament. They're finally back ranked. They're 25th in the country. They are playing well. They look good. And I'm really excited to watch them play against a Kentucky team who I think will have a lot of fire under them, especially after losing to a rival like Tennessee on the road in the fashion that they did. So I'm really excited to watch this game. I think it'll be a very fast-paced game. Interested to see how Kentucky and Bama's guards kind of go at each other because they're so high level. Javon Quinterly and Xavier Wheeler. I don't know if Ty is going to play this weekend or not, but him and J.D. Davidson would be really awesome to watch. And their last meeting, I know Bama lost by 11. But since then, they've won 3 straight. And now it's time for the rematch. So really excited to watch that game as well. Next up is UT in Arkansas, the University of Tennessee, that is, in Arkansas. I really am interested to see this game because I kind of somewhat think it's like a clash of styles. Tennessee has played more up-tempo, but normally they're more in a half-court kind of set kind of deal. And Arkansas is more up-tempo. I love watching Musselman play because they love to turn defense into offense, and that is the type of basketball that I love to watch. And so I think, for me personally, it really comes down to if Arkansas can lock up on defense and make Tennessee really have to play in the half-court, which is somewhere they struggle, I really think that this game could get out of hand, but I don't think that would be the case. I think Tennessee has kind of found their stride, especially now that they are playing Zakai Ziegler a lot more. I think him and Kennedy Chandler being in there at the same time and then having someone like Vescovi kind of come off the bench, it has really been a enlightening moment for Tennessee. Excuse me. So it's definitely going to be interesting to watch. Like I said, it's a clash of styles, and I'm very excited to watch that game as I am for every college basketball game, just about. So now we're down to my last 2 games. The first one I want to talk about is Duke and Florida State. Duke and Florida State. If you saw the last game, then you know it was an amazing game. It came down to the wire. Went into overtime. Florida State eventually took it. I think this one's at home now. This was in Durham. I don't see Florida State coming into Duke and winning, even though Cameron Indoor has not been the Cameron Indoor that we've known over the past couple of years, the impenetrable force that we saw, for years and years. A lot of teams have confidence when they come in there. They think like, oh, I can come in there and win now. So I definitely think they'll come in there with confidence, especially with Leonard Hamilton, who I look at as like the second best coach in the ACC behind K. I just love what he does on offense in terms of getting big guys who can stretch the floor, guards who are quick but strong and big. So I really think it's going to be a fun game to watch. I don't think that Duke is going to come out like they did down in Tallahassee. I really think they're going to try to make an effort to get the ball to Paolo, get him going. I think their defensive effort is going to be higher. That was one of the main things that I saw when they played Florida State. Florida State was spreading them out a lot of back cuts, a lot of defensive lapses. And that's been Duke's MO this year, defensive lapses. They play really good defense for 30 seconds and lapse. I mean, if you look at Their 4 losses, they have 4 losses by 9 points. They pretty much all could have been avoided if they played defense. So really going to be an interesting game to watch this weekend. Really excited to see it. Like I said, it's gonna be a very interesting game to watch. Last but not least, and before I get out of here, like I said, I love talking about the women's game. I'm a grad of the University of Tennessee, so for me, it is it was kind of like an honor to kind of watch the Lady Vols play. It was really cool, but the University of Tennessee women's team is now back on track. Coach Kelly Harper has done a fantastic job. But this weekend, they played the juggernaut that is the South Carolina Gamecocks. They are 24-1. I think their one loss came against Missouri by 1 point. So I was talking about Duke, 4 losses by 9. They have 1 loss by 1. And they only have 3 games left as it stands now, and this is their biggest game they have left against Tennessee. Now, I don't think Tennessee wins this game. I don't think Tennessee wins this game, but I do think that it will be a battle. I mean, they're both really good teams. They're both really good teams and really strong on both sides of the ball. But when you have a team that has Aaliyah Boston, Zia Cook, and a squad around them, you really can't beat that. So I'm going to be really excited to watch that game. Like I said, I love watching women's basketball, so that's going to be a fun one to watch. But that's it for today, guys. That is the Full 40 podcast for today. Thank you for tuning in. As always, check out all the podcasts here on the Press Play Podcast Network, as they are all awesome, and I hope to see you next week. Peace.